Now, you very much champion and strive for issues concerning women as the Shadow Minister for Preventing Violence Against Women and Girls. So how widespread is domestic violence?
Well, domestic violence, we know, is incredibly widespread. It's almost every 30 seconds there is somebody calling the police over a domestic violence incident. It's in all communities. This is one thing that is really understood now. But also within, the difference can be that certain communities find it harder to talk and to share. In our Asian communities, we still struggle to come forward, and we have to tackle it. It's in the interest of men and women that we tackle it. We do not want our children growing up in households where they are seeing violence. That is happening too much. 750,000 children a year, at least in this country, seeing that domestic violence. And I have had young people say to me, because we've been doing summits, safety summits in schools as well, and many from the minority communities, African, Asian as well, saying that they've seen this domestic violence at home, and they grow up thinking that this is normal. Yes. The young women growing up, young girls, nobody wants their daughters to grow up thinking that it's going to be okay for their partner to hit them. So this is also about, if there are issues, then how do we intervene? How do we support the family? How do we change the culture as well, so that we recognise it's okay to come forward. It doesn't shame the community to talk about these things. The work that Southall Black Sisters have done, Refuge have done, Rape Crisis have done, working with so many specialist services, Saheli in Manchester as well, so many that I've visited across the country. What they say is that the women need help and the families need help, the children need help. But we have to make sure that as a country and as a community, we're saying no to these issues.
Is there a high issue of domestic violence in your own constituency?
There is a growing issue of domestic violence. It's not unusual, and what we find as well in it's global. And look at the issues in India as well. But what is very gives me confidence is that when people start to talk about these issues, it's the first step to changing. Everything starts with talking about it and it being on the political agenda. Then we can start to see the change come in. What was acceptable yesterday is not acceptable today. And in our communities, we need to be talking about this more. So I feel confident, and also that with our diaspora communities here, we can be saying to those in India as well, that we support your changes, we support what you're trying to do, making life safer for women in India as well. That's how India is going to progress. It's a world economic force. It can tackle the social issues that hold it back.
The reporting of domestic violence against Muslim women has recently been initiated at a mosque in East London, and if this project succeeds, they said they will spread it nationwide. Do you think this is a good idea where language barriers, cultural issues are concerned?
This is a wonderful initiative, and I have met some of the people involved. There are also other projects. The Khadija Welfare Foundation, started by young Muslim men in West London as well. The reason that this is important is raising this and working with the faith communities also, recognising that there isn't any cultural excuse for violence against women and girls, and working with the leaders wherever they are. This gives people confidence, and it also gives people confidence to not just raise these issues, but the prevention. The Labour Party has said we need to put prevention at the core of what we do. So if I come in, as Labour comes in, if I then go into the Home Office team as a minister, obviously everything can change in May, but if I come in and working with our Home Secretary, then we will be bringing forward a bill, a Violence Against Women and Girls bill. And what that will do is make sure prevention is at the heart of what we do. More education in schools, every school, to understand what a healthy relationship looks like. But also that working with and making sure we have a commissioner. So then this becomes embedded across our politics, across our governments, all the different departments working together on violence against women and girls.
And with regards to female genital mutilation, how widespread is this problem in the UK?
This is more widespread than perhaps we recognise. Thousands of girls at risk, and again we're finding this through the statistics where they're starting to monitor this in hospitals, that it's much more, about 400 just recognised in the first month since they were starting to record statistics within hospitals. And the reason why this is important is because young girls are at risk across the country, and the law has changed
to certain communities, isn't it?
It's more widespread because it's not just one country.
It's not the Hindu communities or the Sikh communities.
Not so much the Hindu or Sikh. It has been more countries where there have been Muslim backgrounds, but not exclusively. It's actually different countries. It's across a wider range of countries. Indonesia, a lot of Africa, Egypt. So many countries, but some areas where it's been a Christian background as well. It's been a cultural issue, not a religious issue.
Exactly.
And so, and if you've got 120 million women and girls around the world who have been affected, and many or more at risk, you have to find ways in which you're working together to raise awareness.
How can we stop it?
The law has changed as well, and we worked on this in the Serious Crime Bill. So you actually have more protection measures like forced marriage protection orders. You can have female genital mutilation protection orders where girls are at risk, to be able to prevent their parents taking them out of the country. Greater levels of being able to charge. There's never been a prosecution though, and we need to make sure that the justice system is working. Parents will be able to be prosecuted for cutting their daughters, because this is child abuse. This is the way it's recognised. I work with campaigners across the country on this as well, and raising awareness in schools so that young girls can also be aware. They can raise if they have concerns. These are the things that can make a big difference. So we have to keep working to make sure that young girls in this country are safe, that we end female genital mutilation, and we don't have then, because what happens is it's not just that, it's the health issues and the health impacts that can come, bladder problems, fertility problems, pain for life. That's a cost to all of us, not just to those women.
Severe depression for the rest of their lives, suicide.
Depression as well.
Yeah. Now, one of the issues affecting your area is the expansion of Heathrow has become a big issue, and it's affecting the lives of people in your constituency who also have jobs there. But you are fighting for a better Heathrow. So tell me what you've done so far.
Well, we've always said that there needs to be a future for Heathrow, and I was very vocal against Boris Johnson when he was talking about Heathrow closing, because the impact that will have on our population, on house prices, on jobs, over 70,000 jobs directly from Heathrow, or over 114,000 in the area, just coming from indirectly as well with Heathrow. So I have been very vocal about the need for a future for Heathrow. The community has been divided whether we need a third runway or we don't. That's why the Davies Commission was so important. We called for this as well. There should be a cross-party way of working on this. The Davies Commission will be reporting just in the new Parliament. Then we have to consider the findings. Where will it recommend? Why will that be right for Britain's economic interest? What will then the impact be on the local community? Will the community be satisfied with that? Have there been advances in technology to reduce the noise coming from planes, which affects my community? It affects the schools in my community. How have they been compensated? We don't believe Heathrow has done nearly enough in the past, and we have fought for more compensation for schools that has come through, for the community as well, for houses. How do we tackle the pollution and the congestion around Heathrow? How are we going to deal with the climate change issues? So some things are unresolved and will need to be part of any package for the future. Whichever party comes into power will need to consider the findings from the Davies Commission. And one thing we have said is we need to also have some certainty. We would commit to reviewing that and then coming up with a decision with the Davies Commission very quickly once you've looked at the impact and you've reviewed that with the community, which is the most important thing.
But what about the fact that the Mayor of London suggested taking Heathrow out and moving it, getting a new airport for London
Well,
somewhere
the mayor for London has obviously backtracked now that he's also looking for a seat in West London.
Yes.
So you have to actually say, how much do you believe somebody that's going to do something based on self-interest in that way? And you know, I don't think that people will have agreed to Heathrow leaving. It would be like taking a mining village out of a mining community. It would be a generation of unemployment that would result. That's not what we want for people in Southall, in Heston, in Feltham, in Slough, in it's in Brentford. These are, you know, this is more than livelihood. This is your assets that you have built through your whole life. It is the main industry. All the industries, engineering jobs as well around that.
Yeah. And one of the issues that's affecting Britain at the moment is the 3 teenagers from Bethnal Green who were said to have gone to Syria and joined ISIS. And then there was, more of the youngsters were caught, and then just yesterday 10 people were stopped in Turkey and believed to be from Britain. Who should shoulder the blame for these younger generation being radicalized and fleeing to join terrorist organizations? You know, who should shoulder the blame?
You know, there's one thing we have to recognize, which is the reality of young people's lives today, what they're seeing over the internet, what they're having access to that parents may not see. And that's one of the reasons why we believe so strongly in compulsory education around relationships and around how you stay safe, and making sure that it's tackling the issues young people are facing today. We would make this compulsory in schooling, which the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats in the past have voted against, because you can't make decisions for young people today based on how life was yesterday if you want them to stay safe. Now, it's very difficult for different reasons. Firstly, because sometimes when you're young, you have a nostalgic view, or you can be influenced by what's going on, and
It's also a cultural issue that the community you grow up with, isn't it?
Sometimes it is, but you know, there are many young people who are saying no to this. I think what's important is we say, what are the issues that are making people feel excluded, or making people feel that, you know, there is something more attractive about going over to be in ISIS. I think there's some of that, but what's attracting them? And I believe there needs to be much more discussion in schools. I believe that there needs to be greater awareness with parents, but also, where is this influence coming from? How is it not being seen before? Why did the government cut the Prevent funding as well? That was the community-based funding, which we believe was so important. That's why we had it in communities, because then you can have the schools working with the mosques, working with the police, to look at what are the impacts and what was causing the radicalization. How do you spot the signs early? How can people be supported? How can you make sure that young people feel they have a stake in Britain as well? So this actually means that you have to empower those who are the teachers and the leaders. I've had teachers tell me in West London, they've heard what young people are saying in the schools, and they can see that they're starting to be attracted, but they don't have the resources to be able to put the right role models in front of them, to be able to spend time with them, to explain that no, that isn't the way, to be able to say, actually, this is why we live in a multicultural and a more diverse way. We have a democracy that respects everybody, and to show what actually otherwise life will tell them over time, but sometimes we need to accelerate that understanding.
Has this had any impact on the Muslim community in your constituency? Has there been any backlash? What kind of impact has it had on them?
The Muslim community in my constituency has also been working very closely to help tackle some of these issues and also give a positive message of Islam. Islam is a peaceful religion.
Absolutely.
And in the very large mosque, the Hamza Jamia Masjid, there was a very, very helpful and important dialogue of discovery evening. The mosque opened up through an interfaith evening, talks that evening as well about the nature of Islam. The positive way in which the teachings are promoted, the way women and men come forward and have the roles they play. And it was positive. They had speakers who were from across the country, male and female, but also internationally, talking about why they're all against the violence, that what is happening abroad does not represent the vast majority of Muslims around the world, and how they feel actually misrepresented by ISIS, by those who were the terrorists. They don't believe believe they are Islamic, and they want to stop the word Islamic being associated with that terrorism. So it's very important to be working with the communities. Local communities have been taking a lead in this, and I work very closely with them, because if we do this and we spread that positive message of Islam, that also has a very, very big impact on where there's negative influence and extremists, those who want to promote extremism. They won't have anywhere they can go. They won't find that there are people who will welcome them, and they will find people who will say, you do not do this in our community.
Now, how important is this historical link between India and Britain for the Labour Party with regards to further trade, investment opportunities between the countries?
Well, very important, and this was the big subject of why I went to India last year as well. I wanted to be looking at how we strengthen those trade relations between Britain and India, and there's also some very good follow-up work we've done around the country, also visiting Basildon with Basildon Council have some very interesting partnerships they've developed. The reason being that if our economies are to thrive together, we need to work together, and we have very strong cultural links with the diaspora communities. Those are door-opening assets. You know, we underestimate the impact of being a diaspora community on how we can both be a bridge for India and businesses in India that want to get to the West and to the world, who come through Britain to go to Europe, but also how we build new products together. You take the best of both worlds, whether that's education or exporting knowledge about healthcare, helping India develop its GP services, primary care services, secondary care services through technology that we may have developed here or processes we have here, how you reach out into communities. So we can actually see both countries benefiting from what we have to offer and what we have to share. So I saw tremendous examples both in the manufacturing as well as in healthcare, as well as in public services, as well as in private consultancy and entrepreneurship services, of how we can learn the same lessons that India has developed. What's working there sometimes can also work here. How you tackle joblessness, it's higher in minority communities here. We work hard, we focused on that before in the Labour Party, but what lessons can we also learn from abroad? These are some of the very important questions.
And the unveiling of the statue of the Mahatma Gandhi, how do you see that in Parliament Square?
That was a very special moment, and I was attending also on that day, because when that statue was unveiled, it was a sign also that Mahatma Gandhi had a place in British public life. He had made such an impact, and to be there next to Churchill, to be there as a matter of pride, not just in what Gandhiji achieved and the impact he's had on so many people's lives, a huge influence on me when I grew up as well, but how Britain and India's relationship is so strong together, and how we should have that symbolised, and how I think it's a true example for generations to come, not just of our history, sometimes the difficult moments in our history, but actually just a question and a more positive point about our future.
And with regards to your own political career, how far do you see yourself climbing the ladder?
Well, nobody should ever set themselves a limit. And I think you should be focused on the things you want to change. And how do you use the tools of politics? How do you choose the tools of your knowledge in the constituency? How do you promote your constituency and the people there? How do I use my position as well to be able to further, I believe, the representation in Parliament of others from our communities, but also in other areas of public life, in positions on public boards, in positions in local councils. I'm very concerned that Conservatives took away the targets for minorities on public boards, one of the targets that I had been working on when Labour was in power. Because if you don't have representation of minorities at different levels, then they're the stepping stones to be representation in politics. So I think what we need to do is be part of the mainstream, but also recognise our wider responsibility in making sure that we have equality of opportunity for everybody.
And how important is it for Asians and Asian women in particular to participate more in British politics?
I think it's incredibly important. You won't be surprised in me saying that, because we represent so many, but also we are eyes and ears in different ways. Everybody, whether you're from Asian, Somalian, or even Western communities, women coming forward is so important, because 9.1 million women did not vote at the last election. 9.1 million women. And I see so many women who say, I'm not going, I'm not interested. I say, well, what are you interested in? They're interested in the NHS, schooling for their children, the community being safe. These are all political. They don't think
it's their home life.
They think it's home life or just about the community. But political decisions, how you have funding, who has powers, what priorities are going to be there, they are important. Also, the minimum wage, 750,000 women who were benefiting from the they were on 0 hours contracts, but also the majority of women who benefited when we brought in the minimum wage were, majority of people were women. And so we also believe in women's economic welfare. When we increase the minimum wage to £8 an hour, it's going to be majority women that also benefit from that. So this is important for recognising the value of women's work and standing up for that in Parliament, reducing the pay gap as well. But what I believe as well very strongly is that women's voices have to be heard in our politics. The pink bus that people have heard about going around the country, I've been on the pink bus, I've hosted it, going to different constituencies as well. That's actually just symbolic, but it's saying that we need to put women's voices firmly into our political campaigning. So we go around the country.
These women are multi-skilled.
More than multi-skilled. They deliver on so many different fronts and with insights into the family, because they're the primary carers as well.
India had a woman prime minister. It was the East that had female leadership.
True, and it's led the way.
Took it a long time to
India, Pakistan, Bangladesh.
Yeah.
So, we have a lot to learn as well. But I believe very strongly that this is not just, it doesn't just happen, it's our responsibility. We can only do it when it comes from us. We can only do it when we take interest, when we raise issues with our politicians, and then when we actually support not just each other, but also daughters to come forward, get that political experience, become knowledgeable, become wise. Whether or not you stand yourself, become knowledgeable and wise, because in doing that you change the world for better, for you and for others in the community.
Do you see a day when we'll have an Asian Prime Minister in the UK and perhaps a female Asian Prime Minister?
Why not? Why
Do
not?
you think this is going to happen?
It's perfectly possible.
10 years, 20 years?
It's perfectly possible. There's a huge number of talented people in Parliament already, but on both sides of the House, I believe. And I believe that if we can do more, as we've done as shadow ministers and others have done as ministers, if we do more, I believe it makes a difference, because that's part of being mainstream in British public life also.
If your party wins, what changes would you bring in terms of laws?
Well, we believe...
Which would you not keep?
Well, look, the most important things that we've been talking about, and people will be hearing all of this during the campaign as well, fighting for the future of the NHS, fighting to make sure with the 2.5 billion we raised from taxes on larger homes, reducing tax avoidance, tax on tobacco companies, we would make sure there were 20,000 more nurses, 8,000 more GPs, 48-hour GP appointments, make sure that there was more support in the community. We would be building 200,000 homes a year, making sure that there was housing for the young people coming forward. You actually could be average age 33 now to be able to buy a home. Reducing tuition fees to £6,000. Young people coming out of university with debts of over 44,000. Then not able to get a mortgage. We want to give young people the very best start in life, reducing as well the cost of living. That's why we would freeze energy prices. They would be able to go down, but they won't be able to come up, and make sure that energy companies pass on, when their prices fall for the energy they're buying, they pass it on to customers. So many things we would do. It makes life easier for people and gives people the opportunity to get on.
3 reasons why your constituents should vote for you.
Well, I believe that I have a track record as an MP that's rooted in the community. I believe also that the NHS that is making such that people need to improve services is absolutely vital, and I believe also that the next generation needs to be prioritised as well. And not just that, but I have a young constituency, younger than many in the country because of the nature of the demographic. So tuition fees, making sure that we have class sizes limited to 30 for for 5, 6 and 7-year-olds, but also making sure that we have jobs for young people, jobs and guaranteed apprenticeships for young people if they want that. So guaranteed tackling youth unemployment. That will make a huge difference to the well-being of our community, but also civic leadership. We want to change things, we want to work together. I want to eradicate poverty in my constituency. It's the way to go.
And on May 7th, how hopeful are you that you will win your seat again and that will be a Labour victory this time?
I'm confident we're going to be absolutely in government.
What about election pundits saying we'll have another coalition government?
Well, I have to say that the pundits are changing their views every day, and I think in terms of what people are seeing about Ed Miliband, they're seeing a different person because you don't get to see him directly so much. I think the leadership debates have been really important for that.
Has the TV debate changed a lot for him?
Well, I think it has enabled people to see that he's down to earth, he's a real person, he's rooted in the reality of people's lives, very different from the life experience of David Cameron, focused on making sure that ordinary families have a way they're getting on as well. When we want Britain to do well, it's only through everybody and all families doing well.
And what's your message to the Asian constituents watching you today?
Well, my message would be that we've got to participate in this election. I want people, obviously, to be voting Labour. I believe it's right. I believe we have the track record on equality. I believe we will focus on those public services and people's livelihoods and their jobs. That makes a difference not just for everybody today, but setting those foundations for the future generation, for a fair and equal Britain. That's what we all believe. Those are our values. That's what we want to see staying a reality.
Well, thank you very much, Seema, for this very interesting interview. And thank you for watching our program, Your MP, Your Vote. We hope you'll join us again next time for another edition. So until then, goodbye.